So tonight I'm going to do a little experiment. Uh, for several months now, I've been running a D&D campaign in the Forgotten Realms in Faerun, and I wanted to record a video about it. And yeah, just to give you a little background on the setting, um, we are using the 5th edition rules with a little bit of tweaks. Mainly, uh, when it comes in terms of the weapons rarity, it's only +1, +2, +3. I've actually changed that to +1 through 5, and the leveling is a lot slower. Um, for example, to get to level 2, you have to get 1,000 XP, and then level 3 is 3,000, and so on. And I mainly did that to kind of encourage players to work together and to not like bum rush them to like level 4 or 5 or so on. Um, and yeah, let's get into this proper, and I'm gonna describe the characters now. So there's three. The first one is uh, well, let's see. Who should I start with? Let's start with Taviri. So Taviri is an Aarakocra monk, and if anybody who doesn't know that, what that is essentially an eagle slash bird person race for this setting. And she grew up in the Star Mounts, that mountain range up in the High Forest. And at an early age, she basically became a monk of sorts, and kind of grew up in a monastery, like a local monastery nearby. And further along down the line, she had a brother that was actually killed by several orcs. And as that happened, she had kind of lost it. And besides the orc raiders, she actually decided to go out and start killing just any and every orc, whether it was regular orc or a half orc, innocent or guilty, it didn't matter. Um, and because of this, Taveri, she was actually kicked out of the monk monastery and is now currently trying to make up for it. And she is now started to head south. The next character is Devia. She's a wood elf, also from the High Forest, cleric by trade. And as an on, I'm losing my words. At an early age, Devia lost her tribe because also once again because of orc raiders, and her people followed the god of change and mischief, and that being Erevan. And because of that, as she after her tribe was lost, she went to other elven tribes in the High Forest area for help, and because they followed this god, they turned her all away. Yeah. So she said, okay, screw this. So she has then rejected all the tribes and headed out of the High Forest and slowly has made her way down south. And lastly, we have Rowan Taproot. She is a halfling ranger, and I'm going off of what she put in their character sheet, which is kind of funny. Uh, but I quote, Rowan just super liked nature, and one day packed up her things for a hike and never came back. No one was worried, though, because that was just Rowan. She's around. So I just imagine her, if she's from the High Forest, maybe, or A Forest, or wherever, uh, just went on a hike and just kept going. So the three of them, they started heading south. The way the story started off, they met around the Daggerford area, and they linked up with a caravan there, about, I'd say, 15 strong, and they started to head south towards the city of Baldur's Gate. Now, as they they started talking along the way south, but as they made it to Baldur's Gate, the city gates were actually closed, and the caravan had to keep going further south. It was mainly closed because there was, well, for one thing, an iron shortage, some bandit raids in the area, and also some. They didn't really. I didn't really get into this much, but there was a little bit of political infighting also happening in Baldur's Gate at the time. So they were forced to head south, further south, and as it became dark, um, it started, they they started heading south towards the Friendly Arm Inn, and as it was becoming dark, the caravan all of a sudden was attacked by a group of kobolds. They weren't sure how many at first, but as bullets started raining down from their slings, the kobold slings, and it just scattered everybody from the caravan. Everybody started going every which way. The only ones left to face any of the kobolds were Devia, Taveri, and Rowan. And so the three of them, the kobolds that were actually left, not chasing after any of the others in the group, were about 4 to 5 left. And so Rowan and Devia and Taveri, all three of them, attacked the kobolds. And so it's funny because I thought at least somebody would have gotten damaged in this fight, but as it turns out, no, they just mopped the floor with the kobolds. And so yeah, Devia. One thing I forgot to mention, Devia, even though she's a cleric, she specializes in bows. Same with Rowan, being a ranger, and Taveri actually uses a quarterstaff, and besides her fists. And so yeah, they just mopped the floor with those kobolds. Um, so it was later that night, and they thought it was roughly around, I'd say 10 p.m. if I remember correctly, and they thought, oh, we could camp here for the night, or we could try to make it to the Friendly Arm Inn. And so they tried to make it to the Friendly Arm Inn, and a few hours passed. They do successfully make it there without any issues. And as they make it to the Friendly Arm Inn, picture a large fortress, fortress walls all the way around, and kind of a towering, what looks like a pseudo kind of like keep, I guess, in the center, or well, not in the center. I'm sorry, off to the right, back right, as you walk in. And so yeah, they walk in. There's some guards patrolling. Just for safety's sake, one of them stops them at the gates, asks who they are. After they identify themselves, they are welcomed in. And so yeah, they make it inside to the actual fortress, to the inn. And first person they meet is a red-haired dwarf named Thomas. And Thomas, he's pretty nice to them. He gives them free room and board, as is custom at the Friendly Arm Inn. The only thing they have to pay for is food and drink. And I want to say at least a few of them. I'm not sure if the whole party did, but a few of them got some food and drink for the night. Went into the common room, and there they actually met 3 Flaming Fist soldiers. For a little bit of background, in case anybody who doesn't know, for this setting, the Flaming Fists, they are the mercenary group, mainly stationed in Baldur's Gate, but they're the main military force for the region. And so they walk in, they meet these 3 soldiers, kind of basically about to work the night shift. They're just having some drinks before they head out. And one of them that they talk to, Angelo, he gives them a little bit of lay of the land, tells them that, or actually warns them, I'm sorry, about some of the bandit raids that's been happening lately in the area, along with some ogres, obviously the kobolds, and other creatures in the area. So they go out on their night shift, as the party just kind of wind down, eat a few things. A lot of it, a little detail I did point out to the party was a lot of it was left over, so it wasn't the best of shape of food. but they did what they could. So they went up for the night. They all shared a pretty large room that had 3 beds, and so they stayed there for the night. The next morning, they woke up, and specifically there was a half-orc woman that was also staying at the inn on the other side, and so Devia and Taveri, they both just run to the door. They don't want to deal with this orc. Because of their backstories and whatnot. No, they didn't want to have any of it. And Rowan, being the halfling as she is, has to run to catch up to him. But before they could leave the inn, though, Thomas, the dwarf, the barkeep and owner of the inn, stops them and asks them if they could do him a favor. That he said they would be rewarded if they could. But essentially, what he wanted them to do was deliver a birthday gift to his brother down south. And his brother, his name is Tarum, and he owns the smith in the town south of there called Baragost. And he tells the party that it's a little late birthday gift because his birthday was actually a week ago. So he's not sure how his brother would actually react. So the party agrees to deliver this for him, and Thomas, of course, thanks them. So they leave the inn, start walking around in the fortress, about to leave, and just at this point, they meet a young elf boy. Well, a young man, really. I would say, in human age, he's probably like 21. He's not that old. And he's kind of gathering up his things, and they start talking to him. And they learn that he's going to be heading south also to Baragost. But the party starts looking at his gear, and he really doesn't have anything of worth. He has like one long sword on him, but that's it. Like no real armor. It's, if he gets jumped by something, he's dead. So the party all kind of agrees, after talking to him a little bit, to escort him to Baragost, since that's where they're going. And so he agrees. He introduces himself as Prism. I forgot to mention that. And so Prism and the party start heading off away from the Friendly Arm Inn further south. And as they go further south, it's almost becoming nighttime, and they actually are jumped. I did a couple of rolls for this, and they actually are jumped by a couple of bandits in the area. Immediately as combat starts, Prism was one of the first people to go, I believe, and he, instead of charging through, he immediately hangs back. He goes backwards and kind of stays out of the way. And so Devia and Rowan once again use their bows to kind of keep a distance from the bandits and pick them off one by one, as Taveri rushes in with her quarterstaff and fists flying. And after a couple rounds, they handle the bandits no problem. I think Taveri got a little bit of injured, just a little bit, but not too severely. As they were looking through the bandits' belongings after they defeated them, Devia came across a couple of symbols, kind of medallions that the bandits had, and they weren't quite sure at first what the medallions were, but on closer inspection, they actually figured out that the medallions was that of a kind of like a dragon symbol, if I'm recalling this correctly. It's been a while. I might have to look back at my other notes, so forgive me. But essentially, what the medallions were represented was the organization of the Zenitarium, which I won't go into detail here about them, but they'll come in later. So they grab a couple of those, and they start, see if Prism's all right, he's fine, and start heading south again. Uh, and they head south just a little bit of ways, and nightfall starts to come, and so they camp. They camp for the night, and the next morning they pick right back up, heading south to Beregost. So they arrive to Beregost, and Beregost is a pretty large town. I did edit a little bit of the population size because I'd say the population is roughly like just a couple hundred people. I know if you look on the sites and whatnot, uh, it would say it's probably like over 1,000 or roughly around this time period. But I kind of wanted it to be a little bit more small feel for it. So they make it to Beregost, and immediately as they enter, Prism he thanks them. He says he's gonna head to the Felpost Inn for the night, and so they kind of split from the, or he splits from the party. And as they enter, they actually come across a town crier, a young boy, and he starts shouting about that there's been a murder at the temple recently. About it, I'd say about a couple days ago it happened, and the murderer apparently is named is Basilis, and the boy mentions that there's a reward and that the high priest slash governor of the town, Keldith, at the temple will give out any more information. So the party takes this of note, and they immediately head towards the smith to give the birthday present to him, to Taram. And as they do, they walk in, and they see once again another dwarf, red hair, really long beard. For reference, Thomas actually had just like a normal short beard, and Taram's is really long. And so they give Taram the birthday present. Taram kind of jokes, kind of jabs at them back and forth, saying that it took his brother long enough. After talking to Taram a little bit, they do find out that it's actually Taram that spent his money from his business to help Thomas get the rights to that inn. So they look around at his shop for a little, his not shop, smithy, for armor and whatnot. And Devia actually has her eyes on some shadow armor. It's studded leather, but it costs a lot. I think I had it at roughly 15,000 gold. Yeah, but it was really good armor. It was basically the best armor he was selling. So she took note of that and was going to come back for it. So the party left Taram, left the smithy, and went up to the temple to check out about this murder that they were hearing about. And so they go up to the temple, and they're greeted by one of the priests there, and they ask for Keldith. And so Keldith walks out, and he tells them about, starts describing Basilis. He's shaved head, a little bit of a goatee kind of going on. He describes that there was 3 murdered at the temple, and last they saw, Basilis was heading southwest. And so the party agrees, after talking to Keldith a little bit, to go after Basilis. And so, and Keldith says he will reward the party 1,000 gold each if they complete this task, which is a lot, starting off. So the party totally agrees to this. They're going to go after Basilis. Beforehand, they look around the town a little bit more and actually head to the Felpost Inn. There's actually 2 inns, the Felpost and the Burning Wizard. The Burning Wizard, from what they heard in town, is a more expensive inn, so they decided to go to the Felpost first. Upon entering the Felpost Inn, they're actually greeted by, well, not really greeted, but they first talk to a halfling there named Perdue. For reference, he has kind of unkept hair, kind of mutton chops going. As they talk to him a little bit, they find out that he's actually a bard, that lost his loot recently, and he lost it to a group of gnolls off to the southwest as he was making camp a couple of days ago. So as the gnolls were, from what he was describing, came up to him, or started to go towards his camp, so he just got the heck out of there and fled towards the town. So the party uh, agrees to keep an eye on his keep an eye out, sorry, for his loot. And so Purdue said he'll give him a little bit of reward, not much, just like 100 gold or so. Um, so the party agrees to keep an eye out for that. Next, Taviri actually eyes a very kind of burly looking man, very strong looking, kind of decked out in some chainmail. I believe it was, no, I'm sorry, not chainmail, plate mail. And so Taveri kind of starts making her way over to him and starts talking to him, and immediately takes to liking this guy. And the guy in question she's talking to is a human paladin named Bjornen. And they start talking and chatting back and forth. And also Bjornen mentions about a cave nearby that he thought about going adventuring there. He just hadn't went there just yet. But called Dark Hollow Cave. And he gestures to Taveri's group that if they want to check it out, they could. He'll leave it to them. And so Taveri's talking to Bjornen. And Divya at this point decides to go up to this other human woman at the bar. And her name is Landrin. And Landrin's not in the best mood. She is very grumpy because apparently she has a house infested with spiders, giant spiders. And so she's been trying her best to get a group to go in there, kill the spiders for her to, get her home back. And after a few moments of conversation with Landrin, Devia's just, because of Landrin's bad mood, Devia just says, okay, forget this. Landrin's just, like I said, in an awful mood. So Devia doesn't agree to get the spiders out of her house and just goes on down the bar towards two flaming fist soldiers. So as she walks up, Devia walks up, two human flaming fist soldiers, or one of them in particular, a gentleman named Scar, is talking to his second in command, Jesse. And he's telling Jesse that he's actually about to leave Beregost in her command, because he's being recalled to Baldur's Gate. That he mentions a little bit of politics going on there. That's why he's being called back. And so he leaves Jesse to in command. So he greets Devia as she walks up. And Devia, after talking to the both of them for a little bit, she actually shows. Devia mentions that they came across a group of bandits on the way here, and shows them the medallions they had found. And once again, Scar and Jesse put two and two together and thought, oh, these are Zenitarium medallions. That's strange, because their base, or at least one of their bases, is off to the west of, for reference, from Baldur's Gate. So they were kind of perplexed, wondering what they would be doing, raiding, iron caravans, and they start going into all these, theory crafting, essentially. And so a few moments later, Scar says, okay, he has to go, and he heads off. He says it was nice to meet Devia, and he goes off back to Baldur's Gate. And Jesse also mentions to Devia if she finds more of these medallions, to bring them back to her, and she'll reward her with some more gold and whatnot. And lastly, Rowan, she she's not too big character-wise. She's not too big in for civilization, so she's not really good social skill-wise. But she tries, after a little bit of egging on towards from the party, uh, she decides to go speak to this one gentleman that's kind of hanging out at the bar, another human, and he's kind of in some robes, and she goes to speak to him kind of awkwardly, and he kind of says hello back, and come to find out, his name's Tarsonis, and he is actually a courier for this area, uh, for a certain group that he doesn't reveal just yet. But he, for one reason or another, he's been a courier for these different groups in this area for about a couple months now. So he just kind of tells Rowan that they ever need, if she or her compatriots need anything delivered anywhere, to just come back to him. So Rowan comes back to Devia and Taveri. They have a table for themselves. They chat with Prism just a little bit, and they also at this point notice a hand axe on the wall. It's on the right hand side of the wall, or yeah, and it's just kind of just dug into the wall there. And so Devi at first, or no, I'm sorry, it was Taveri, I think, at first saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go get that hand axe," and so she goes up, tries to pull it out of the wall, and it doesn't budge. Nothing happens. And so Devia walks over there and says, "Well, let me give it a shot." And so once again, she tries to grab it out of the wall, and again, nothing happens. They both can't pull it out of the wall. And so Rowan, even though she is a lot shorter to try to reach this hand axe, starts to go up to it. And she's like, "Oh, I'll give it a shot. Why not?" And as she starts to pull on it, it's funny because at this point the player actually rolled a nat 20. So the hand axe just comes flying off the wall into Rowan's possession, and she just, puts it in her backpack. And so I actually wasn't expecting any of them to get that hand axe, but it was kind of funny. So Rowan gets a hand axe +1. And if I do any more of these videos, this will be way further down the line, but that hand axe will actually have some, I guess you would call it some sentimental value later on down the line. So let's see. So next, the party actually turns in for the night. They get some food and turn in for the night. This time, their room that they get is a lot smaller compared to where they stayed at the Friendly Arm Inn. And after that, the next morning, after getting some food, they decide to try to hunt down Basilisk. So they start heading southwest. And it's a little bit of a trek, because last they heard where Basilisk was near some ruins to the southwest, and that's where also, I forgot to mention this, but Perdue said as he was coming back from, or getting away from the Knolls, he saw some lights coming from there. And also some other rumors that the party heard as they were leaving town is that Basilisk had supposedly an undead army at his back. So the party still decides to go after Basilisk, even with this information. And so they start making the trek down south. And it takes them about a good, I think, 8 hours, if I remember correctly, to get to these ruins. It's a while. And so they make it. And as they come up to Basilisk, he actually only has 2 undead skeletons with him. And so the party kind of maneuver around, kind of get in position. And Devia and Rowan, they both said they were going to try to release their arrows. And as soon as they do, Taveri will rush up and attack them. one thing I forgot to mention was Taviri. She's an Aarakocra monk, like I mentioned at the beginning. So technically, she could be able to. She could fly, but in character, she was actually injured before the start of this campaign. So her wings are, even with magical healing, her wings are still kind of busted up. So, uh, so she can't just rush over there, fly. Like she can run, obviously, but she can't fly over there. So after getting in position, uh, Devia and Rowan they both fire off their arrows as Taveri starts making her way over there, and then Taveri engages Basilisk and a couple of the skeletons, and so they're locked in this kind of epic battle scene kind of going on. Devia gets a little bit closer, uh, mainly at this point as Taveri's kind of holding off the skeletons and Basilisk. She gets a little bit beat up, so Devia rushes over and casts Cure Wounds on Taveri, gets her back to full health, and as it so happens, one of the skeletons actually crits on Devia, and Devia goes down. And I wasn't expecting this at all. And so, as it happens, Taveri's locked into combat with Basilisk, and Rowan actually starts rushing over to where Devia is to try to get Devia up. Uh, Taveri starts attacking Basilisk again, actually gets him down to where, basically down to 1 health. And so she doesn't kill him, but just basically knocks him down to where he can't do anything. And so she starts attacking the other skeletons as well. The other skeleton that had knocked down Devia actually critted once again as she attacked Devia, and so that made Devia fail 2 death saves right off the bat. So Rowan quickly just got there in time to get Devia back up, give Devia a health potion to get her back. I don't think it was full health, but it was close. But yeah, it was a close call for Devia. And so the group, the rest of the group, come together and defeat the rest of the skeletons. And at this point, they're kind of deciding on whether or not to spare Basilisk or not. Devia at first wants to kill Basilisk, but Taveri is definitely against this, trying to, not really, only killing when she needs to. Same with Rowan. Rowan is not doesn't really want to kill Basilisk, so all 3 of them agree to actually capture him, kind of tie him up, and bring him back to Beregost. And so they head back. I do a couple of rolls to see if they come across anything else, but thankfully they do not. So they make it back to Beregost. It's late in the evening, and they go up to the temple, back up to Keldith, and surprised, Keldith wasn't expecting the party to bring Basilisk back alive. Keldith actually wanted Basilisk dead. And a little bit of information. Well, at first, let me say this. Keldith is kind of furious at first. He's really agitated, annoyed. He agrees to have his priest take Basilisk off into custody. But the party comes to find out that Keldith actually lost his wife to Basilisk. And so, but he is going to follow the law, though, and have a trial for him. But it's honestly against his better judgment, because he really wants Basilisk dead. But the party also finds out a little bit of information that apparently Keldith's wife, actually, from what the priests had told Keldith, didn't, as they were going to try to raise her, didn't want to come back. Because for anybody who doesn't know, resurrection in Faerun, it's pretty common. Just gather enough ingredients, pay enough gold, and you can become rezzed. But yeah, what the priest had told Kel'Thuzad is, that she didn't want to be rezzed though, that they tried and it failed, and so understandably, Kel'Thuzad was kind of frustrated. He wasn't sure the reasoning behind it, um, but he's just accepted it. So he rewards the party with 1,000 gold each, and he goes to see about Basilisk. And at this point, the party they are exhausted, even though they just got all this money. They are exhausted and start to head back to the Feldpost Inn, and they greet Prism once again, kind of chat with him just a little bit, get a few drinks, get some food, and turn in for the night. And this is roughly about where the first session ends. So this is where I'm going to end the video, and yeah, we'll see how this goes. So thank you for watching, and I'll see about doing another one of these. Take care.